The Taxi Work Business Update released in GTA Online almost 2 weeks ago, and after having a bit of time to reflect, I decided to make an in-depth video covering everything that went wrong with this highly anticipated addition and how it could be improved. The recent drip feed finally added the taxi as a purchasable vehicle. Not cheap by any means when you consider what you get out of it, but it was something that players had been requesting for a long time, so I was happy all the same. The problems start almost immediately after buying it though. Once purchased, you'll quickly realise that your newly acquired taxi can only be called in by phoning Pegasus, meaning that it can't be stored in a personal garage and has very limited usage options. On top of that, the vehicle can only be repaired when you're not actively working on a taxi mission. And when you can enter the mod shop, you'll find that just like most other Pegasus vehicles, there's absolutely no customization options whatsoever. But the real icing on the cake is you don't even need to buy this hunk of junk if you want to do the missions. Simply come over to downtown Cabco, located at this point on the map, and before long you'll be set up with a taxi of your very own without ever having to spend a penny. You'll go through a couple of little intros and loading screens, but eventually you'll be spat out onto the streets of Los Santos ready to service the ungrateful NPCs in ways so mundane it could literally bore you to death. With that glowing recommendation and the free car you just acquired, you might wonder why the hell anyone would want to buy a taxi in the first place. Well, I wondered that as well. And about all I came up with is that by buying it and spawning it through the Pegasus menu, it essentially means that you have the option of starting the missions in any area you choose, instead of having to go to the downtown Cabco office. Personally, I found it a lot easier doing them out in the country, where there's a lot less traffic and greater opportunities for taking shortcuts. But with the missions taking you all over the map, chances are you'll end up out here eventually anyway, and overall, owning your own taxi really didn't help that much. Especially when you consider the main gripe that I and many other players had with this update, which is of course the astonishingly low pay rates. The missions are often long, tedious, and sometimes require you to drive from one end of the map to the other. There is a tip system that builds up for every consecutive passenger that you successfully deliver, but it caps out after 10 missions and still doesn't raise the stakes anywhere close to where they need to be. The max tip you can get sits at around $2,000 on top of whatever the fare is. Problem is though, you'll be penalised for just about everything you do. Whether you take too long, drive too fast, or heaven forbid crash into something, your tip will be sharply reduced and make the time you've spent even less worthwhile. Hell, even when you do a really clean run at max tip, get from point A to point B in a timely fashion and without any crashes, it still feels like you're being shortchanged. And I know not everything is about money, but at the end of the day this is a very monotonous piece of work, and without a decent reward system I feel there's not going to be much incentive to play, and before long it's just going to be forgotten about like so many other features in this game. The only good thing to really come out of it was the fast travel service, which I covered in my previous video, but even that was a bit of a letdown once we found out it could only be used once every 48 minutes. And look, I know what some of you are probably thinking. Red, surely you weren't that excited for some basic ass taxi missions that were available from day one in story mode, but hey, I actually was. I was a big fan of just about everything the story had to offer, including most of the side activities, and I was really looking forward to Rockstar expanding on taxi work for their online service. But not only did they not enhance the experience whatsoever, they actively made it worse. One of my favourite features from the story mode equivalent was the random occurrences of delinquent passengers who refused to pay for their taxi service. Encounters like this added a lot of unpredictability and even personality to the people you were picking up. Every time you'd be wondering if this would be the person who'd try to stiff you on the bill. But unfortunately they've removed this element from the online version, and it's just an ongoing repetitive process of collect and deliver, removing the limited entertainment that the missions had to begin with. Roughly about 1 in 5 people that you picked up in story mode would try and get away without paying. And apart from adding some much needed variety, it also felt realistic. My dad was a taxi driver in real life, and trust me, this crap happens all the time, even in a normal city, let alone a crazy ass place like Los Santos. I mean, come on, this is the world that's operated by thousands of maniacal billionaires, set to the theme of over-the-top Hollywood-style action. All of it then filled with elaborate robberies, overwhelming personalities,
Show me your butthole filler!
and a design that tries to make you feel like there's excitement and danger around every turn. Surely with all of that in mind, they could have at least ported the taxi work in its entirety and included these little encounters. Just think for a second of all of the wild scenarios you could get lured into by passengers wanting to take advantage of a seemingly innocent taxi driver. Not only would it have been a lot more fun than what we got, but the extra effort and danger involved would have commanded a higher payout that ultimately would have made the missions more relevant long term. That pretty much does it for today though, folks. If you enjoyed the video, a like really does go a long way, and if you're new around here, then definitely think about subscribing as well. I've got some really exciting new content on the way, and you don't want to miss out. Until we meet again, you bunch of legends, I am Red Nitrate, and I'll catch you on the next one.